There we go.
John is here.
And is John in?
She's on vacation?
This week.
Oh,
John's not there. Yeah, Sandra is.
John?
Yeah, John's not in. Which I called.
Okay, let's stand for the pledge.
of the United States of America.
Okay.
And the
To the
republic
republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with liberty and justice for all.
Are we live?
Okay, I'm going to take the roll call. Dr. Bush is here. Joe Marie?
Here.
Deanna? Here. Reverend?
Here.
Gavin?
Here.
Curtis?
Here.
Okay. And we have Mr. Mizak is virtual. And we have Mrs. DiCaprio and Richard. Okay, so. Do we have anybody for public comment?
Not that I see, no. Just want to make sure we're on too. I didn't hear from Eric Soul. Does anybody have John Batisti's cell phone number? I think. Hey, are we on?
Number.
Oh, he's on that. All right, good.
You need John's
And you can hear
number?
us because I see you on our part.
Usually. Who wants it?
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. All right.
Did you talk to him?
I know I talked to him, but Eric Soul just said we're live with 27 viewers. I just want to make sure it was going through because I saw the microphone on our end.
John?
Yeah, if you could.
I'm sorry, now.
Oh,
Everybody's calling.
I'm not. John's got 3 calls coming in.
You should be.
Hello, John. This is Kent. Hi. Oh, okay. Okay, we won't wait for you. Oh, no problem. I hope everything turns out well for your mom. Oh, good.
That's just Ken.
Okay,
You're welcome. Bye now.
so he won't be on.
He'll a few minutes later. So
Okay,
he's on
okay,
the
right.
side. Okay.
All right, so we have no public comment. We did get an email from Denise Callistra. I'm sure all of you board members have received that. So expressing concern. Tonight we have a special meeting due to unique circumstances. We certainly are well aware, the superintendent, his administration, input from stakeholders, teachers, and parents have been gathered to make some pretty difficult decisions. I'm sure, Richard, you're going to let us know a little bit about that tonight. Also, as a Board of Education, our committees work very diligently to make sure that we're keeping up to speed. And at your place, you have a new committee sheet. And I just want to let everybody know that the Audit Committee and the Finance Committee is synonymous. And the same people that are on the Audit Committee are going to be on the Finance Committee. Now, the Audit Committee is chaired by Curtis, and audits are when the district has spent money. The Finance Committee, on the other hand, is going to be the same people. John Batisti very nicely volunteered to be the chair of that committee. And the Finance Committee meets with our Colleen to take a look at finances prior to the money being spent. In light of the great unusual things that are happening with COVID and the district spending close to $1 million for sanitary supplies and materials to prevent the outbreak of COVID, the fact that the state has reduced our state aid by 20%, which is quite a hit for all school districts. I'm sure you're reading about all school districts that are not very happy about what's going on. So at your seat, you will see that the Audit/Finance Committee is going to reinstitute the finance part. We will meet with Colleen, and at this point in time, I think that we probably need to meet once a month most likely a few days before our board meeting. However, that can change, but because we're interested in the money that is targeted to being spent as a Board of Education, we're trying to be very responsible and help out with whatever we need to do. So that being said, what else do I have here? I just have a question. When the district purchased COVID materials, did they purchase MERV 13 filtration? Is that one of the
Some.
products?
Yeah,
But some of the filters we bought were to test to see if they were adaptable to our current air handlers.
Uh-huh.
So we also hired a consultant, Danforth, who's coming in, and they will be working with TBS, who is our air handler contractor.
heating,
I guess.
ventilation, cooling,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they're coming in and they will be doing an eval to see how that's working with, yeah.
First test went well. 3 of the air handlers could handle MERV 13 in ledge.
Okay.
So that was a good sign. But those are some of the newer ones, but
And
so they'll be testing every building.
so tonight, we also have a resolution to approve a contract with BoCES for $756,206 for laptops for virtual learning. So the board, in the past several years, has never really had to face, like all school boards, what everyone is facing due to the COVID. So I guess we all need to get on board and know what's going on, because we have to deal with this year, but next year will be even worse if we don't take a look and pay attention to what's going on. So that being said,
Correct, yeah.
I'm going to turn the program over to you, Richard.
Okay.
Is there any questions from the board in regard to the audit finance committee?
No, but I do have a question with the negotiations. We used to have 3, we have 2 now,
Where?
and I was on negotiations committee.
Oh, yeah, who was the third one?
They,
Oh, well, she just didn't put you down.
okay, I was wondering whether we were just
No.
moving.
Take you off of anything, yeah. No, okay, I'll tell her. She must have been on the first one. This is the second shoot she did. Maybe she just had originally left you off. Okay,
That's fine, I just wanted to make sure.
okay. All right, Richard, you're on.
I will, just about the computers as well, an update, a positive note. The administration within Lynch has worked over the last few weeks to recover as many of the Chromebooks as they can. So they were at a number of over 460 a month ago. They're down to 55 units that are not in. So, yeah, they did a great job. We were there today, yes.
Wow.
I applauded them for the records as well. Some are still not working correctly, some are missing things, but they've really done a nice job calling parents, going out to their homes, just really following up. So that was a really nice thing. I also have a quote from Bill Van Goyder from our insurance company. $6,700 was the quote that we can insure the computers we're purchasing. So it seems like a large number, but when we look at $700,000 to replace, this would be for lost, damaged, or stolen items. So I think it's something, once we get these items in, I'll bring that forward to the board as far as if it's worth having that policy with all these computers we're looking at. In addition, he's still looking into whether we have coverage on it from the previous years, a policy that, I wasn't involved in, but I'm having at least check it. So I'm waiting to hear back, and we've been working together on it. Yeah.
How many are we out additional to the 55 for middle school?
Well, we were at about just about 700 was a high number.
Yeah.
So that's 250 others. I think elementary got back maybe 100 between all of them. Scott's been doing inventory of it. So I think we're right around 200 still out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which isn't terrible. But now we're going through and seeing which ones are operable.
Right.
And some of them are from 2013. So some aren't really going to update anyway. So they're usually a 4 or 5 year life on those Chromebooks.
If that much.
If that, right.
Because certain things happen to those Chromebooks and you can't really fix
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Like the keys pop off. I've tried to put them back.
Yeah, so if we ever get another smart bond from the state, I think we want to hold on to some for replenishing, and replacing computers, as opposed to we spend everything on infrastructure, which is important, but it leaves us in the spot. We have all these clear touch in the classrooms, but we can't replace computers unless it's out of general fund. So that's the hard part of it. So in the future,
Before, well, you were, oh, I'm sorry. while you were out of the room, I made this statement, so you have not heard this, but I learned that there was at least one parent that was told to keep their Chromebook through the summer.
Oh, okay.
And I wonder if we know if other parents were told that would have affected
Yeah,
the number of non-return
right.
Chromebooks.
It might have been somebody who was like in the ESY program and said a year where they were here all summer, possibly they were told to hold on to it. So in a special education classroom, they might have told them to.
Okay,
Or if they're in summer school in some way.
this was a
Yeah.
parent that has
Yeah.
a special needs child.
Then that would make sense. So they kind
Right.
of, that would be it, yeah.
So perhaps other parents were told, because all we heard was that they haven't been returned.
Right,
But it makes sense to me if some were told not to
yeah.
hold on. And so the number of, we used the word delinquent
Right, right. It
to
could
describe
Yeah.
those that haven't returned it and maybe lost it, would have gone down.
there might be 100 of those out there.
Right.
They were told to hold on to them, so that could be a
Right.
good thing. So I'll follow up with,
I have a burning question.
Okay.
Now, you were not here when the laptops were handed out to the students, okay?
Mhm.
But I would like to make sure that when the laptops are handed out again, Joe Marie, there's serial numbers, aren't there, on the laptops?
Yeah.
There's a serial number and then there's an asset tag,
Yeah.
the district's asset tag.
Yeah.
And they
So-
keep note of these in a file, I'm not sure.
Right.
If it's Mr. Scholl's department who would have it, or purchasing maybe.
So
Scott
what we
has
have is
inventory.
a system called Asset Max. So Questar just came in this past week,
Mhm.
did a full inventory of all of our items. Obviously, middle school, he couldn't accurately do because of the conditions, but I did ask him to come back in October to do a follow-up on the Chromebooks. Because he said some of the tags were different in each building, depending on whether the media system was on there or not, so we're gonna double check those. So he had a little confusion with that. So he is gonna come back at the end of October to do a follow-up on the Chromebooks.
But Dr. Bush, to follow up on your end too, we need to make sure we have the serial numbers and the tag
Yeah.
on each one of those that go out, right, for the distribution.
Because
Yeah.
how are you going to know if a certain student returned it?
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't keep track, and you can keep track by school.
So what's
Okay.
happening now too is, I guess there was different versions of tracking in each of the buildings, so we're all trying to get them all in the same library.
So consistent
Because the
distribution.
librarians,
Right.
were all told to take one card at a time and log them into the system
Right.
to loan them to students or to faculty.
Right.
But I notice on here, this is actually this first top white tag
Yeah,
is the serial number, and that is not something I can peel off.
no,
The other one I could peel off
and I think
if I
that,
tried hard enough, or I could destroy it. So
right,
if you were prone to trying to do something to this number, you wouldn't be able to here. I mean, the serial number is there.
yeah.
So maybe we should somebody should decide on going by the one number. Maybe they already do. I
There was
shouldn't say
some
that they should do it.
Some different things going on, so he's gonna follow up with us, and then we're
Right.
trying to get everybody to do the same checking in at that little scanner.
Mhm.
So, and I don't believe each building was doing that, so now we're trying to get everybody on the same board.
But neither one of you, maybe help me, board members, neither one of you were here when the auditors from the state education department came in.
Yeah.
They specifically were looking for the tags on the laptops. They wanted to know what was in each building. They wanted to know if they were accounted for. And let me tell you, there were some, I think the technology people in the buildings had to really hustle.
With
find
the
that
every
out.
last one of them, to try to find.
So they were tracking the smart
Another
school
situation
bond.
where,
Right,
Any of the smart schools bonds,
the
so
bond,
the bond money that was being spent on whatever, even if we bought a smart TV or whatever,
Yeah.
they were checking for all of that. Which, by the way, is that all settled with the contractor that we had
Yes.
that
we got
that is-
$103,000 back.
Oh, 'cause
How
it's
much?
State pricing.
103.
Yeah, I remember that.
he did? Okay, thank you.
But Dr. Bush, I wanted to kind of address, not answer your question, but kind of address it on this. The Chromebooks that are passed out now are accompanied with a and this wasn't the last time, wasn't the case last time, but a form that we have to fill out. And each parent or guardian that would show up to pick up will have to show identification. So there's some type of tracking I'm noticing on this runaround than we had the last time. But that's an answer to the question whether or not they're keeping a track of the serial numbers or not. I don't know that, but I do know it looks differently this time around than it did.
Which is good to hear, but
And we learned.
we're finding out enough that it has to be an electronic tracking, form and Excel spreadsheet that shows them all. So we'll
We
make
just
sure.
need to tighten our belt.
Yes, absolutely. It's a lot.
Especially with 1,500 new ones.
Right.
You have to, right off the bat.
And I do think that insurance is probably worth it for that amount of money.
So would it cover,
$6,000, it's a-
would it cover a loss when a student does not return?
$250 deductible.
the problem is the deductible, right?
Yeah.
That's the.
Bill
So-
code, right, bill bank order.
Are they going to also
Yeah.
cover the leased ones, the,
So this is a lease purchase, right? So it's
Correct.
ours. They'll be ours. It's not a BOCES,
correct? All right, I understand that.
right?
But that was my question in our last meeting. So could we get an insurance through the leasing agency that we're going to, or no?
So BOCES is the one
BOCES.
that's leasing it. for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so then this contractor they reached out to for the insurance?
He's nicer. He's a
Okay.
representative.
Oh,
of
good,
the
he is a
customer.
nicer?
Yeah.
So he'll also cover the lease?
So any of
uh,
our assets, they're essentially our assets.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's what I'm
Yeah.
concerned about.
So theoretically, we have a $250 deductible.
It is a
It's a $400 Chromebook. We're only getting $150 per Chromebook.
That's the problem, right? So I don't know if you could pay more, if the insurance was $9,000.
We have to do the math and
your
figure
deductible
out what our
was
average
$175.
loss is
Right.
and then calculate out whether that insurance investment would make sense.
Right, because new they're $450.
Are you doing
Yeah.
that?
After a year of,
I was planning on doing that. He
Yeah.
called me today.
Oh, he called today,
Every
okay.
year they do.
yeah, we just got the update
Yeah.
that the deducticle's
The
$250.
deductible.
You did remind him that it's Amsterdam, Greater Amsterdam School District, not Burnt Hills, correct?
So to remind everybody, when the property's here on
Right.
site, that's covered under a property loss, right?
Correct.
So it's at 100%. When it gets out into the community, then that's when you have the $250
Right.
deductible. So if something happens to it when it's here, we're fully covered because it's a property loss.
So if
But
it
that's
breaks,
why
if it breaks, it's gonna break in the school, right?
Oh, but-
Oh, that's now on recording, Gavin.
Yeah,
Have you never
Gavin?
seen my?
What's the matter with you? That's on the recording.
Be careful with those points. Oh, and by the way,
That's why I didn't throw up a
by the
farce.
way, I was on a Zoom meeting with Paul Tonko the other day. It was, arranged by NISBA.
oh, yeah.
And there were several other board members from other school districts, and the plight is the same, and the message was the same. And he really could not respond. He could hear everybody's anxiety about starting a new year with all this issue going on. He didn't say a word,
Right.
but he got the message.
Right.
He got the
He
message.
listened, so.
So I wanted to just say that. Okay,
Okay.
I'm not going to interrupt you anymore, Richard.
Okay,
Just got the
so-
microphone.
Well, I started it by talking about the Chromebook, so I wanted to give you that information. So we received a notification that our UPK and kindergarten money was held up, and Colleen and I discussed beginning of last week and then midweek about the money that had been owed. So we started seriously considering what we had to do with this program to see if we could front the money, which is an incredible expense, and Colleen's going to go over that specifically. I also had met with our principals, and elementary principals obviously are very much in favor of UPK and kindergarten because, it gives such a solid foundation and, really focuses on phonemic awareness and students having letter recognition and sounds. And we know that the gap exists with those that don't attend pre-K and those that don't attend kindergarten when they come into first grade or kindergarten. So it was important enough that we had a special meeting, and we wanted to go over it with the board and have you see the actual numbers. We know another local district has delayed until January, and so we can discuss our options, and I'm going to let Colleen go from there in regards to the numbers here. So
when Rich and I had met, we looked over the figures. Obviously, you had the staffing cost, which staffing, I gave each of you an analysis of the staffing cost and who's included in the grant and who's not. So when you look at it in total,
Which
In
one are we
summary.
looking at?
Second page, right? The,
Yes, so so if you look at the first page of this right here, that's basically gonna tell you what portion of the grant, so our grant each year from UPK is a little over 2 million. Of that 2 million, the grant portion in salaries is 944,000, and that's including benefits. The general fund picks up, believe it or not, 733,000 of that, which when you look at all salaries with benefits, that's close to $1.7 million. The other portion of that, when you take out the grant portion of salaries, is our CBO expense, which is well over $1 million, which gives you the total grant value of $2 million. What hasn't been paid from last year, which we fully expended all of our UPK expenses last year, what we have not been paid from the state is close to 1.3 million. So the state has only funded us 35%.
and we paid our CBOs.
Correct.
Correct, right,
And
so
we paid everybody else. Obviously, we're out that money.
Okay, so in other words, none of our contractors at all, we don't owe them any money, correct,
At this point, no. Correct. No, they got paid everything
And yet we have that 1.3 million outstanding
that we're waiting to get.
that we're
money
waiting
for.
to get back.
Correct.
Have you received word on that?
So when I was telling Rich, I was on a conference call or Zoom meeting.
Right.
Christina Coughlin
Oh,
from
yeah.
SED was on.
Mhm.
When I posed that question, is there any word regards? They all just shook their head and smiled and said no.
But this is for last year, do you understand?
Yeah, oh no,
This is not this year.
both. They said they do not know when.
You're as serious as a heart attack right now.
I'm serious.
That's 1.3 million.
Correct,
We're already in the hole.
Right.
correct. And no
last
guarantee
year.
going forward.
And if we do, we're concerned it could be a 20% reduction
Correct.
on that too.
Well,
State.
That's almost a given. Anything
Right.
that we look at
It's almost a
will be
guarantee.
at 20%.
20%, correct.
So it's substantial.
It's huge. So when you look at the total, because now I'll step back a minute. So the aids that they are paying, even at reduced, is what they call our 3609 aids, which are state mandated support aid for school districts. Because pre-K is not considered a mandated aidable section, there's no permit, no idea of when that payment schedule is going to be. So right now, there's mandated scheduled payments when you're looking at our state aid items, such as our transportation aid, our gen aid. Those are scheduled by law, state mandated payments, even though those are going to be also reduced by 20%. But there is no set schedule for UPK payments,
So there
which is
can actually be
evidenced.
no payment ever at some,
Mhm.
they could decide zero.
Correct.
So was UPK the only program that this affected, or was there any other funding or grants that were not allocated back?
So because again, so if you look at our other grants, so we have our title grants, those are federal funds. So they cannot pull that funding back. So you have the difference between your state funds and you also have your federal funds. The other grants are your title grants and your IDEA grants. Those are both federal grants.
And remember, Sandra presented on those grants the other night. We had a reduction in some of those too.
Those were also
Yeah,
reduced
those were
because
reduced too
our
on a federal
free and
level.
reduced
Yeah.
accounts.
So right off the rip, we're
Well,
a couple $1 million behind what we had anticipated in our budget.
Correct.
On top of the costs that we brought to you with regards to COVID that are over $1 million
Are
now.
well over
Well over $1 million,
dollars.
so.
And
So
they
it's,
just keep, and obviously they keep climbing. So if you even looked at the cost of expense, so, as MERV 13, if you wanted to really retrofit the whole district, you're looking at another close to $500,000 to $750,000. If not,
but we have not budgeted any of that money.
correct.
And you did not put in the budget any of the COVID money, correct?
Correct. So what I just did is, and as so the laptops, $200K, that I know I'm going to spend this year just on the BoE lease. I had to do a lot of budget transfers within the general fund to accommodate that. So there's a lot of supply accounts that are going to be much lower, and those are going to continue to get lower unless we have some magic pot of money come in. So again, we have our budget, which is what we're mandated to stay within the budget. So we had, but we did not have the COVID-19 expenses because nobody really expected us to be in the situation in September.
Are we, I don't know, I even hesitate to say this. With the transportation, I mean, the transportation company has to be sitting on pins and needles too,
Oh, absolutely. Correct.
based on the fact that many parents have elected to have their children be coming to school virtually. So, I mean, what's going on with that?
Well, we waited to sign the contract, which they've been very eager to sign, because we don't want to commit not knowing when kids will start and that date. So we have a meeting with them tomorrow at 10:30
10:30, right.
with STA to go over those types of things. So we have our route set. We have our purple and gold that Eric clearly did such a great job on to hopefully be more efficient. But, you know, we just got final numbers on remote only. So we've been very hesitant to sign the contract, not knowing of when school would actually open, because we were waiting to hear from the governor if we were going to change. So we know we can open now. But now it's a question of, do we delay it or do we wait on pre-K and kindergarten? So,
What are our final numbers on remote only?
well, our final was 42% of kids, which was about 1,400 students. It's gone up a few. We had decided in our principals meeting that if parents still weren't comfortable, that since it doesn't hurt it's less kids in the building, that we would allow some parents to still take their kids to remote only if they didn't feel confident yet. So we've had like maybe 10 requests since the 19th when we actually stopped the enrollment online. So we just had a few more. So we're right at about 42 or 43% of students.
So, I mean, that's a substantial number.
Yeah.
My question here is, why are we then delaying the start of kindergarten and things along those lines? You do the math, you're operating at 50%, 48% or 58% occupancy to start with. You take that out, I mean, you've got 30% of your students in there, less than that.
Oh yeah, you have.
So what is the point of, I mean, let's be real, kindergarten in an online format is not
Right, any of the lower grades,
real.
I think would help, yeah. So this was a conversation that started with the principals probably 3 weeks ago. And they really felt that they didn't want to have pre-K and kindergarten in the building to start off. As we talked about that slower rollout of the programs, that they wanted to get first through fifth grade in the buildings to get them in for a couple days. They knew it would take a lot to get those students in, the social emotional part of it, the kids crying and that lower level. And they wanted to have time to dedicate to it. So they had asked me about a month ago if they could wait on it. I said, you know, we're still trying to open. That time it was the 14th. I said, let's just wait. Then we waited to open until the 21st, and they really have given a pretty good argument as to why they felt it was necessary to hold off on kindergarten and pre-K. So,
Are we sure it's not just an underlying plan to cut both programs? Or, I mean,
No,
that's what comes to mind to me, and that's
this is,
a huge concern.
this is
So our
way before the
kindergarten
funding
program is funded through the state.
is funded, right?
That is funded, because that's all part of our Gen Aid. The
Yeah.
pre-K program is the portion that is not funded.
This conversation happened way before the funding became a concern. The funding was just a concern last
I
week.
think they wanted mass breaks too. They wanted.
They
to
wanted
get
mass
adjusted to
breaks,
the
they
mass.
wanted to wait and adjust, so they wanted to hold off on kindergarten
I
and
just look at
pre-K.
numbers, I mean, our classes are
They're small.
24.
Yeah.
Divide at times here.
In my understanding, there's also 30
So we're down to
pre-K
14
kids that are
kids.
overwhelmed too.
Between golds and purple days, you're only at 7 kids per day,
You're-
theoretically.
You're no more than 10 kids generally.
Our teacher and an aide can't facilitate 7 kids in a building or in the classroom.
Well, they wanted to have that orientation with families as well, so we were planning that orientation the 14th or the 18th, and they realized they couldn't get all those parents in that time. So they asked for the orientation to run through the 14th through the 28th to allow parents to come in and have individual meetings with the teacher and the aide for pre-K and kindergarten.
So when are you officially beginning school then, under that?
21st for regular school still. And
Okay,
October 5th is when they wanted to have kindergarten and pre-K start.
okay. Question, so are we reimbursed for any preschool children transportation at all?
And we cut that
Program
program
last
last
year.
year.
That's not
Okay.
correct.
And are we being reimbursed for any kindergarten student?
Those are all included in our allowable pupil.
Okay,
So they are included, because again, so think about it, the state has always, they encouraged years ago, when everybody was a half-day program, they
Yes.
encouraged the schools to go to full day. And at that time, you got the UP, the extended day grants. So now they encouraged everybody to do the full day K program, That was all included, K to 12 is all included in the.
So that funding then is covered under that extension grant?
Correct. That funding is all included in our general aid.
Okay,
Pre-K funding is a separate pot of money, which is at $2 million.
all right.
What else have we discussed? I mean, what other cuts have we made to offset some of these additional expenses and just losses in general?
So we just
We're
started
gonna have to-
talking, yeah,
That's a big.
we started talking about Wednesdays of what that looked like for staffing, because it was that deep clean, remote only, no students in the building. So we talked about it. Hi, John.
Hi, John.
Hello, everybody.
Okay.
Hi. Colleen and I talked about a reduction in aides for those days, which would save $377,000. You know, other districts are looking to wait to open because it would save on transportation costs, on cleaning costs. I still, would like to be able to open in September 21st, but you're seeing other places wait. So each day that we don't have to open is, a lot of money saved by not transporting and not cleaning. So the aides was the first one. That was, almost $500,000.
How's that work contractually with them and the union?
That's right.
Right.
Agreements.
We have a grievance for it, so that just by having the conversation that we're looking at it. But we have that option. We talked to the attorney 3 weeks ago maybe about it, and so we can, based on the funding, reduce if we feel necessary. So it's not a furlough, it's not a reduction in force, it's just the hours are reduced.
So are you talking about the age right
That's
now?
20%.
20% of all teacher salaries?
No.
Aides.
Or aid salaries?
Yeah, and it's
So 20% of $15,000.
It's such a small amount of money for the aides individually. For the district, it's $400,000 a month.
No, for
Yeah.
aid, that's a lot of money.
No, it's huge.
20% of your salary.
And so we haven't instituted it yet because the concern was, one, they're the lowest paid in our district. Number two is, will we lose people if we reduce them? They have to go to another job that's 5 days a week. So we haven't decided. So we were just trying to come up with ideas on what we could reduce. And that was one of the ideas because it was kids aren't in the building. So it's something we need to discuss.
So if you're saying aides, are you including hall monitors in that group?
Correct. So if there's no students in the building,
Right,
I mean, if you realistically you're looking at, you're paying for people not doing anything.
okay.
So we're not
So
the
that would
only
be for
district.
Wednesdays only then?
For
right?
Wednesdays only, right?
Correct.
Right. But we wanted to have that discussion. It
Right.
was just something we had talked about, but it's very hard because it's your
Right.
lowest paid staff.
And
It's substantial for them. And as Gavin said, it's 20% of their salary, which is already low. So it's a tough one.
But everything is tough because
They're all hard decisions, right?
how are you going to bite the bullet and try to contain expenses, whether they get a lot of money or they don't get a lot of money? Some way, somehow, you have to make a decision about how we're going to go forth.
Have you looked at winter sports at this point, or?
So if you look at it, if you look at sports budget and as a whole, including salaries, that's 500. No, this is just sports. So if you just look at your total sports budget, which includes track, volleyball, wrestling, salaries, that's $492,000. If you look at it in total. If you look at your extracurriculars, that's
Okay.
$65,000. So there's
All right, I
extracurriculars,
understand that.
right,
So, but those are annual numbers that you're looking at there, right?
in total, correct.
Yeah, so I'm just saying
Winter,
winter only.
I'd have to break it down by winter. So let
probably a
me
third of it.
break it down a third, right?
150,000.
150.
See, I have a hard time holding on to extracurriculars when we're cutting education in some of the most detrimental years for our student population. If we didn't have such a vulnerable group of students, we'd be having a different conversation right now.
Right.
So when we're essentially taking $550,000 and dedicating it to extracurriculars and then cutting education, we're
It's
here
tough.
to educate students.
Yeah.
So the one thing I just want to mention, I mean, I
Right.
understand, but you also have to consider cash flow. There's a cash flow issue of $4 million that's sitting there that we're not getting in. So at some point, and I'm going to do a cash flow pro forma for everybody. So I'm already behind. If you look at it, if they don't fund this is 3.2. I'm already another $3 million behind from our Gen 8 that the state has not paid us yet for 1920. I'm already starting off at the
So
year,
where are
7 million in
Where are
behind.
sports and extracurriculars paid from?
They're paid from these accounts, but we're only paying them if they're doing the actual function.
So
So-
we're essentially setting aside a pot of money for a hypothetical situation that we don't even know if we can plan out.
Honestly, I've already pulled from some of these accounts to cover the Chromebooks and other expenses. So remember, we already have over close to $1 million in COVID expenses.
I'm very much not on board with cutting the pre-K, and I will be very vocal about that. And it's something that's near and dear to my heart. I have seen not only for my own children, but more so for the other children out there.
Yeah.
I have seen firsthand the effects that this program has and the skill set that it provides these kids with, the stability it provides them with. We're not in a Burnt Hills. We're not in a higher end type of area that can lose this and not see the long-term effects of this.
So Schenectady did the action of delaying it until January. And I think that's prudent because what they're doing is waiting to see what the state is going to do as far as funding. And I think that, and they're in the same situation if not worse.
Yeah.
So they're understanding that, again, you're looking at a program you're not getting cash flow. And I'd hate to borrow any money because right now we just got back our bond rating. So to go and borrow against funding and then have to repay that, you're going to take on you're just really basically kicking the can down the road. Because next year you're going to face even worse.
I think everybody at this table understands the value of a preschool program.
Yeah.
And,
Incredibly important.
you know, to Deanna's point, whether the children are pre-kindergartners or they're school-age children, the children who suffer the most are the children who are marginal. The children whose parents can afford a pre-K program, a private tutor, a computer, a laptop, or any of that technology, they're going to be okay. But even the children whose parents have elected to keep them at home, they're going to suffer because the parent has made the decision, I'm not sending my child to school. On the other hand, I don't know the answer to this question, but I would almost say that our children who have the most to lose, maybe those parents have sent those children, will be sending those children to school, which will be a good thing. The bottom line is, whether you're talking about sports, extracurricular, non-mandated programs, we as a Board of Education have to really take a look at, like I said, next year, the community would not be able to sustain what the taxes would have to be if we don't do something like right now. Now, again, we don't know what the governor is going to do with the state aid, and maybe it would be prudent, and I know people have to get jobs, but maybe it would be prudent to hold off a bit to see what happens so that the children are not losing a whole year, but maybe we can entertain it again for half a year. A half is better than nothing.
Absolutely.
Again,
Well, yeah, my hope would never be to say that we're going to cancel the program. I mean, it's so vitally important for those, the structure of just the classroom structure and number and, letter awareness. So it's scary to say, right now we'll decide to say we're not going to have it for the year. So if we delay, that was always my thought, to say, wait till we get state funding, wait, even November. So
Waiting until January might make sense. Don't forget we have an election and that changes things federally.
yeah.
And, so to actually cut out things altogether, I'd be real hesitant to do that when we don't know in 3 months, things might look much different.
Right. And hopefully, and there's still talk of federal stimulus, and I think it's the state waiting on the federal government to see if there's stimulus money, and we'll all just wait on the state and the federal government at our level. So it's somewhat unfair that we're in the middle of it, waiting and hoping and stuff.
One thing is for sure. The governor has us by
Mhm.
the whatever. And
Yeah,
that
really
is
tough
not nice, but it's a reality. And we can take solace in knowing that every other school district in this state feels the same way. So, we have to be prudent. I'm not saying that we eliminate the program, but maybe we have to kind of wait to see where it goes. And between September and December, like John said, there will be an election.
Yeah.
Right now, the federal funds are separate from the state funds.
Correct.
But we're already behind the eight ball because we were 20% less than what we counted on. Not to mention all these added expenses.
We have the added expenses and then we're owed from last year. So it's just a really tough scenario in that sense. So I
How
like,
many employees are we cutting loose if we do this too? I mean, that's also
So-
some domino effect that
That's-
comes out of that.
second page has those
Right.
employees right there.
Rich, I have a quick question. Maybe Colleen can answer this.
Mhm.
So did you send Sandra out to talk to our contractors and see what the impact would be if we were to hold off until January? Have they had that discussion with them, or is this going to be a surprise based upon what we're doing tonight?
Yeah, we had the conversation with Whispering Pines and with Head Start last week. So
Okay,
Sandra and I talked to Mary Ann together, and then she called and talked to Martha Frank's daughter, Amy, and
Amy.
discussed it. and said,
okay,
this is what we're looking at for funding. So we know that they would either have to decide to pay their employees and keep them on their payroll or hold off until we decide. So that's the reality, because they're expecting us to pay those employees. So it would have an effect on their 6 or 8 for Whispering Pines and a few more for Head Start. So
That's
So we
another
started
thing that
that
I fear the
conversation.
repercussions of is the domino effect of the job loss. I mean, you figure all of these teachers, all of these CBO employees.
But we're not, honestly, Deanna, and I'm not trying to minimize, but every district is going to have cuts.
I understand that, but
It's a reality, and I hate, it's not an easy
It is.
decision.
how many people this
and
is
it's unfortunate that we cut 28 last year in the budget, right? So
correct, that's correct.
it's hard to come into this and say we're looking again after 28 last.
Okay, so what about the Head Start program? How are they going to be malaffected by our numbers?
Unless we're running money and sacrifice our own, they have to get paid their own loans.
Aren't
Okay,
they federally funded?
Head Start, they do get some funding from.
right,
But Whispering
Right,
Pines
and
is
Whispering Pines gets some money as well,
minimal though, like ours is the majority of.
Whispering Pines. So Whispering
Right.
Pines also gets funding from us through our IDEA 611, 619 grants because of their special ed. They've been pulling in more special ed students. So they get about $70,000, $80,000 on that as well. Which
So we
that
have been
is, that's
giving
okay
them.
right now.
all right.
That's federal funded.
Out of grant money, right? So
Mhm.
Because I'm concerned, they have a payment they're having to make to the district. They just bought our building.
No, they paid us
I
for
know
that.
that. But I mean,
okay.
they're having to take, I'm sure, soften the blow of that money that they paid us for the building. So just every little thing, as
Yeah.
long as they've had time to do some planning, I'm concerned about that.
yeah,
I'd be
well,
surprised if they didn't, if they hadn't been aware
right,
of
and
this,
we all
because
found
this
out
has
last
been in the
week in that
paper.
reduction,
Much
you know,
plans we
that's-
have, you found out last week and they found out.
Right.
Yeah, that's, Sandra and I were talking about it. We felt blindsided just like they felt blindsided. That's when we found out. There was always talk of possible reductions and then it came out that it's official. So it's,
I do recognize, as was said already, that a lot of districts are facing these kind of decisions. And yet I would throw my hat in with, alongside of some of the things that Deanna has been mentioning. I would rather see a reduction of sports and extracurricular and those types of things, even though I would hate to, I'm a sports person, I would hate to see that happen. Instead of, before considering that, reducing UPK and staff along with that, which unfortunately we may have to do some of that. Hopefully we won't. But I would rather see us as a board look at a reduction of the sports and the extracurricular things, which frankly would be a very tough thing to do.
Right.
But I think our main focus is education first.
Yeah.
If we have to go that
and
route.
we can do that at the direction of the board. You have strong support from your elementary principals in support of the program you added. So, 'cause they see that. So we
Add on that comment that Kent brought up. You mentioned, though, that you've already been planning because of the COVID costs, that money that it's already being spent,
So
essentially.
if you look at those two areas alone, that's
Right.
roughly about $500,000. Our COVID
Right.
costs are $1 million in line.
Right, and then you still have that, 1,300,000 that you're having to make up somehow out of this budget that, where are you getting that money from? That, because did you budget it in for us to pay that off?
No.
So we are right now 1,300,000 plus the additional COVID money.
Correct.
So you mentioned earlier what Kent brought up, that you already are planning on using that money. She plans on using that money, she
Mhm.
said. So
Right.
So in theory, are we saying that we've already canceled sports and extracurriculars? Because
I've already
No, she
pulled
can't do that.
funding. I haven't canceled, but I've already pulled where I can, knowing the known expenditures that I know we're not gonna be expending. I already pulled that out to pay for the $200,000 for the Chromebooks.
So we've
Yeah.
streamlined that portion of the budget to.
So I haven't even touched, the COVID has already pulled everything out of my 16 general supply accounts. And I'm trying to find funding to cover the rest of it.
So I recognize she has not taken money from those. In other words, to say that those,
I've taken from
Sports.
some of their accounts.
yes, but not all of the sports and all of the extracurriculars.
But-
That's,
Well, the
that's,
hope is, not the hope, but at some point, the intent would, you may have to look at that to cover COVID costs,
that's what I'm talking about.
right?
Not what she's already done. Recognize that. But that's not enough.
Mm-mm.
In my thinking, to say,
Yeah.
before you get rid of or reduce a UPK and consequently staff and K and staff and OK, at least we have eliminated everything else. And in my mind, everything else is the sport.
Right.
For the entire season. And extracurricular for the entire, and here my heart, it breaks my heart even to say those words out loud.
How much would that amount to?
well, she said she needs to come back with those numbers because she has right now the annual numbers
Mhm.
that she gave to us earlier. Did you write those figures
492
down?
and 65.
But roughly
Correct.
150 to 170,000 first season is what your
Right.
first season, 3 seasons for that amount, so. And Colleen and I have a list of what, 6 or 7 items we talked about that we could look at for reductions that we're gonna meet tomorrow to go over what we talked about this weekend. So there's other options. It's just a matter of, our community supported the budget based on the sports being put back in and extracurriculars. So it's something you want to look at too, that we've decided
What
on.
about
That was one of the voices that advocated for like the marching band and such.
Right.
Yeah, and I think most of us here on the table, around the table, are very committed to sports.
Right.
And it's,
But it's all weighing the
It's not
options.
easy.
See, the other part of it too is, we don't want to start, we have reserves for a reason, but it came out in addition, when they said we'd have a 20% reduction in funding from state aid, that was part of this, and that we could use our reserves now and have a 5-year payback, 20% per year on it, plus interest.
Right.
Plus interest of our reserves. Normally you have to have a vote to utilize the reserves, and you can take basically from anything. So that's part of it. There's also the hope that we get some FEMA funding, but that wouldn't be until 2021, and the process to go through to get FEMA funding. So there's other ones, but they're all unknowns. They're all saying, boy, it'd be great if we got this.
Right.
So
Right.
it's our decision if we are fiscally prudent and conservative and just pull back and
Is
wait.
it possible to
So-
have no new hires? Are there some way that without hiring someone else, for example, if you have very few children coming to school to be taught in person, what is the need? Do we have anticipation of hiring new people, new teachers? Can that be put on hold to save some?
The only new teachers there's no brand new teachers. The only teachers that are coming on that I'm aware of are replacement for special ed.
Especially, it's
Special
just
needs.
introduced. Yeah.
So,
And obviously, I don't think you can cut that. So,
Gavin,
No, go ahead, you go first.
so remember, we had that issue where we were going to give a very nice incentive for early retirements.
Correct, we're waiting to hear from them.
So, but in that plan, I remember reading, you actually had put down that you would anticipate hiring new teachers at a lower
At a
grade.
lower rate, correct.
So I think what Dr. Bush is recommending is, like, some districts have gone out now and they are only hiring emergency essential type personnel. You're not hiring anyone new, okay?
So your
So-
specials, in my understanding, so, I
That's
mean,
it, yeah.
obviously, if you have your science and those
Correct.
services,
Core
you have
classes,
to.
So
correct.
now that would bring up a question. Is there a memorandum of agreement out there that states that we cannot do that with the ATA? Do they make it so that we cannot? Because as a board, that would be something that we could really look at. Other districts have already done it.
So when you're looking at RIFs, reduction in forces.
Not a
we're
reduction in force.
We're just not, by attrition,
You're
you're
talking
saying,
about
so if somebody
attrition.
leaves, we don't fill the
Seniority,
position.
maybe.
Yeah.
Correct.
We have the right not to fill the position.
Correct.
So, yeah, that's our right, so.
Have we got
yeah,
anybody
that's a
else
good
quite on the early retirement?
So we had a positive response where they accepted the last offer.
Right.
And so we just have a deadline of October 15th, I think, right after
Right.
Columbus Day weekend to get the final thing. So each person saves a tremendous amount of money, even if we replace with somebody at a lower
Correct.
salary.
Yeah.
If we don't replace at a lower salary, it's even more so, but each reduction is pretty substantial. So that's a positive. You know, Colleen did a very good job of that.
But we don't have any handle on how many teachers that's gonna be though.
We had,
I mean, there was 37 teachers that were eligible to
Yeah,
take it.
Nobody.
How many actually
nobody's
takes it?
getting- Yeah,
Yeah,
said I'm going.
None have called you up, Colleen, and said, "Hey, I'm interested."
no, not yet, no.
Okay.
How much information will you have by September 16th at the next board meeting?
Such as,
She'll want a breakdown probably on those
For
numbers,
example-
right?
For example, let's talk about transportation costs. You know, let's take a look at that. You know, write it down, transportation costs.
so transportation, unless we delay school, is not gonna save us any money at this point.
Unless we delay school. Because children are purple and gold are coming Monday,
Yeah.
Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
And then you think about that, and I know I'm anticipating this to happen in our conversation tomorrow, even though I always started off with telling them to come prepared based on what we caught last year. My expectation is them to tell me, well, now we have, because of the capacity of the buses,
Correct.
are at a lower level, that they're gonna counter that as well.
We're
So,
putting a
again-
third of the kids on buses. so-
Okay.
And I think that's the reason why a lot of schools are delaying, because obviously
Yeah,
you're reducing your transportation costs, you're reducing those personnel that are not in the classroom.
Do we have a number of students yet? I know it's a little early, but do we have a number that are actually stating they will not use the bus transportation?
yeah, we have bus lists are
The
done.
routes
The routes are done.
Yeah.
Okay,
and I'll
forget
have
that.
those
I want to
tomorrow
know how many, like,
gonna pick
Jill
a
Marie,
transport.
her daughter does not want to even take the bus. Jill Marie's going to drive her in.
Yeah.
Gavin's daughter does not want to take the bus. My son doesn't want to take
We
the
have
bus.
those
We're going to
numbers.
drive those in. Do you
We
have
have
those numbers?
We have those numbers, yeah. Eric has them, so I
I
can
was
give
gonna,
it to you guys.
well, I wanna say they're gonna give it to me first thing in the morning too,
Yeah.
more updated for our,
Because that would
contract.
definitely,
Yeah.
when you go in for your negotiating, you
Right.
have to throw that at them,
Absolutely.
Oh, no.
okay?
We still got
So here's the other thing, so
Yeah.
the one thing I just wanna mention about transportation, the reason we're being cautious in the contract is because last year we were mandated, we had to pay them.
Correct.
However, here's the caveat. We don't know if the state's gonna reimburse us for those 3 months because they were not student-driven miles.
Oh, boy.
So when I report on our claim forms, the number of miles we
Right.
drove last year.
But on the form, it actually says student-driven
Oh, yeah, absolutely,
miles.
correct.
Our
So,
aid is by
how
the
can we
miles
put that
generated.
down?
We don't move,
Right.
buses don't move, we don't get generated aid.
Correct.
it's-
so we're not promised that aid as well. So that's another possibility that may hit us. The state has not given an answer on that.
Okay, so now, the other thing I wanted you to
Yeah,
think about
I know.
is,
Don't sign tomorrow.
no new hires, we're taking a look at, see who's going to be
Yep.
taking advantage.
Oh, the
Am I
retirement
getting
plan.
red right now?
Yeah.
Um,
Am I getting
We're,
red?
we're
As
we're
red as
going
your shirt?
between
Okay.
programs for
Maybe I oughta
children
go. I ought to go.
and adults being employed. So, did you think about the teacher aid layoffs for Wednesday when no one's coming to school?
That's where we had like close to 400,000.
Okay, so
That's already been accounted for, right?
that's one chunk. And the other issue, there's too many unknowns, but we have to be taking a look at all of them. With the pre-K, not totally eliminating it, but not starting it right away. So we're not saying it's a done deal, but we may be saying we have to wait a while to see what happens.
Right.
And then, again, we don't know what the state is going to do to us.
Correct.
So instead of eliminating the program, maybe saying it has to be modified. Sports, whatever else is on the table.
Well, Colleen and I also had the conversation about talking with the CBOs to say, would they take a reduction of 20% since we're getting a reduction of 20%? So at least they're paying their employees. So when we come back, so we could say, we look at it in November.
Well, either that or we don't pay them.
Or we don't
until
pay them
get
at all,
paid.
right? So,
Because we
or
can't,
until we get paid,
right.
they sign off and say,
We
your
can't pay.
payment's contingent upon our reimbursement from the state that we get our funding. So to have that conversation with them to say, we don't want to see the program go away, but you have to understand where we are. We can't just front it out, we're not a bank. And so talk about that part of it. Do they take a reduction? Do they, sign off that they'll get paid once we are? So that's all part of those conversations we can have with them.
So have they given you a directive on bed stay this year yet, or no?
Well, it's still, October is still our best
Yeah, but have
day,
they
so
stated how we're going to be counting it and
it hasn't changed.
how it will be the same?
The state hasn't made any kind of directive outside of the fact.
Which is concerning because
Right.
we don't have all these students in
Correct.
Ed's day.
Right.
We're out of luck. What do? We bus everyone, grab them and say, come to the school one day?
We would not do that.
No.
Turn the thing off.
We
I'm
would not
sorry.
do such a thing.
Yeah, but you,
Depends what you.
yeah, throw the pencil
But
at
I
me.
think it's worth reviewing it in October, reviewing it in September meeting again, to say if we're on hold for now and we review it each month, or we could have another special meeting in the end of September to talk about, okay, here's what we have now. With all these contingent pieces we had, all the unknowns, we have 3 answers out of 7. Let's talk about what we want to do. I think it's well worth the time to review it and just
And here's another
say,
thing. Is there anything in the maintenance budget? Like, we have a big project going on at the middle school.
So
You can't do anything with that because
can't.
that's,
So that's a $48 million referendum. That's a separate pot of money, has nothing to do with the general fund. The only issue what we will have, again, so if we look at that, is the impact that we're gonna have with cash flow again, because our debt service payments lined up with our building aid. Our building aid is not coming in, so we got another 20% cut there. So that was always lined up with our debt service payments. So it's a compounded effect. So again, it's aid, it's cash flow. So you're still incurring the expenses, but there's nothing to pay for. So think
No,
about it.
that's correct. You were right about that.
Right.
You are right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And that's another scary thing to look at.
But if every single school in the state
Mhm.
is in this situation, what does the governor want us to do? Stop education?
He wants you to make the cuts like he had to
change
make
the
the cuts.
models, right?
Who are
Turn the
we
TV
cutting?
off.
So you're gonna cut these teachers that are here?
Well, he doesn't want to make that decision. He wants the school districts to make that decision. So you're the
Correct.
ones.
Also, should be noted the state has
Unfortunately,
made
it's a
it
political game.
He knows
These
it.
Well, you're
Teachers,
heads
some
up.
of these teachers have been with us for a very long
I
time.
think 1 or 2 on this list will opt for early retirement when they find out they're
Yeah.
losing.
It's
20%.
unfortunate.
Just throwing this out there, but do we know what kind of numbers we're looking at as far as how many of the pre-K program have opted for online learning?
30.
30
So
30 out of
those,
100.
let's say, is there another alternative program that we could utilize through one of these random companies that have been out there? Take them.
Then you're fighting against the ATA.
Yeah, the ATA
Then
won't
you
allow
have,
that.
correct, you
I'm
can't
just
do
thinking
that.
if we
No,
can
you're right. Your
farm out a
thought
lesser,
process is right.
Right. I agree with you 100%, but then again, you have the teachers union contract.
can we talk to the teachers union? I mean, this is quite an exception here. You would think that
We have a
it's
meeting
cutting the
tomorrow
program
morning.
altogether.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they're not gonna approve going to another program and cutting all these people.
Correct.
No. I'm not
So-
saying going to another program, but those,
With some-
selectively those that have want online learning, and that way we make room in the
Sometimes
See, that's
budget.
what the governor is wanting us to do.
Yeah.
That's the cost,
No,
right?
he's
Well, not a
working
complete cost,
here.
but at least a reduction.
Something
Yeah.
to help with the
Yeah.
cost.
So one of the options that we did put out there, obviously, if we delayed the program by 6 months,
That's what he wants.
was
He wants
furloughing
that.
those teachers. Not so much as a RIF, but you do a furlough. So obviously, then they would still get their insurance paid for. They would collect unemployment.
Yes.
So insurance, really, if you think about it,
Like,
that's a huge cost.
For some more.
Correct. So to help offset that,
It's worth more.
allow them to just pay their premium. And so we would still continue to pay their health insurance during those if we went to 6 months.
Well, what would happen though, if they were furloughed and they could be put on the substitute list, but if they're put on the substitute list, they're getting money, so that would impact on their unemployment. So again,
Right.
how do you win?
So, yeah, I think it's a little over $500 a week right now for unemployment.
didn't we furlough a group of,
Furlough anybody.
we didn't furlough.
We didn't furlough anybody.
But at I think this past school year, we did ask noon aides and so forth to go without work. And they went without unemployment. Is that correct?
No, so you're thinking of March, April, and May.
Yes.
Correct. All of our aides, everybody got paid. Everybody got paid. Only those that refused not to come into work did we not pay. Only for the days they came into actual work.
Okay. Oh, I see how you did that. So if they did not want to work
Correct,
doing the lunch run,
correct, correct.
that's how we got around that?
Not
Well,
getting
I know-
around.
I know,
Yeah.
but that's how
It
we
wasn't
did
to get
that?
around. I honestly think we
Okay.
paid more than.
Oh, my goodness. So that's interesting.
So all of our aides got paid and they did not work.
Okay, and the ones that did not want to do the lunch the program did not get paid. Okay,
Because the expectation is you're getting paid.
Right.
So if you're called into work, you're to come into work.
okay.
So on Wednesdays though, the high school and the middle school, those students will be in school.
No.
No,
Nobody will be in school.
Nobody.
No.
Special education students will get
Okay,
related
so
services.
now you have
Alright.
hall monitors that are not gonna be working on Wednesday. Are they
Correct.
included?
correct.
That's all the aides, yeah.
All right, so Richard, what have we given you as a direction so
Um,
far?
Well, it sounds like a wait and see, and we don't, we can pay our kindergarten entirely. We hold off. We have October 5th for our programs internally. And we wait and review at the end of September or mid-October to see where we stand with state funding.
Well, we're gonna have a meeting on September 16th.
Right, so, well, just in case there's, something changes after, because it's only 2 weeks from now.
I know,
So let's say something happens after that period of time, we could have another special meeting to review. We'll keep you updated on it, but I would love to have it be that we're waiting to see and not cutting. And I
the
think
problem
that's-
is, we're going to have, probably the problem is, unless some miracle happens, we're going to have to bite the bullet. And so, we need options. If the people are not getting paid on Wednesdays, how much money is the district saving? If we do away with extracurricular and sports, how much money are we saving? In other words, we have figures, so
All
we
that
know.
together is about 1 million.
Correct, and that's covering our
And
COVID
we're
costs.
still how much in the hole?
And we're still in the hole by $4 or $5 million.
And suppose we push UPK back to January.
So think about half those costs. That's what we'll be saving.
Half
So
of-
those costs that you see on here right now would be half those
You're gonna cut,
costs.
right?
Like,
So think
which
about
line
half
am I
a year.
looking
Well,
The $3 million.
So if we were to decide that
$3 million
tonight,
at the bottom?
to move that tonight, would
Correct.
you be willing, are you going to go sit down with our contractors and
Absolutely,
then,
yeah.
because what you're doing is you're stringing them along until the end of September. You do realize that?
Well, I think it's better than cutting it entirely.
Yeah, but
not
they need to make plans.
Yeah.
All right?
Right.
Because they also have, like Head Start has students from other than our district in it. Whispering Pines has private pay students, that aren't even
We use
using
them
it.
all over other.
Yeah, and they
districts
bus
as
them in
well.
from every district.
Well,
So-
that's interesting, because what are the other districts doing? Are they paying to have the pre-K kids come into their program?
Well,
So
that's a
I
good-
tell you, one of our neighboring districts only has a 3-month contract with them right
Right,
now.
that's what I was gonna say.
So they're only on a 3-month contract.
Meaning they will take them up till December?
No, they'll start them,
They'll start,
but it ends in
Correct.
December if
With
they
no-
don't get funding.
if
it
they don't get
stops.
funding, correct?
Which concerns me. You start it and then pull it back.
Right. That would be pretty
That's
bad.
even worse.
I prefer
That
that.
is
even
worse.
Right, I
That's
prefer to wait
worse.
right now, so.
That is worse.
It stinks.
They're all difficult, and going back to when we talk about age, when we first started talking about it, it's your lowest paid employees that you're cutting.
I know,
You
I
know,
know.
it's, we're all gonna be through for difficult decisions, so it's just,
But it's the same as Deanna's point. It's the children
Yeah.
with the least ability to be able to take advantage of this enrichment that suffer. Again, here we go.
and your gap grows and your disparity grows between those groups.
And that'll last for years.
Yeah, and you know, it's my part of it too, is we've worked incredibly hard to open school, because I think
Oh,
about
yeah.
those students that
Awful.
need school, need the in-person part of it, you know, where other schools have said they're gonna wait to do remote
Correct.
for a while. Those kids need to get in and get services and talk to counselors and meet with their teachers and see face to face and have that interaction. And, you know, I think they've done a great job to prepare for that, and I think that's really important that we're doing.
Remember, it's since the beginning of March,
March.
they've had no
Right,
interfacing at all,
Yeah.
other than on, and only 20 to 25% of them are even looking
Yeah.
at review courses,
Yeah.
essentially, is what
But
they
the
were
other
doing.
good thing that you did, you're going to evaluate after the first 10 weeks.
absolutely.
And I'm going to be an optimist and say, with all the safeguards that have been put into place in the schools, that hopefully our children are going to continue to be able to go to school, not shut down for 2 weeks or
Right.
quarantine, or end up going back home for
Right.
all their instruction. Again, it's a wait and see. Well,
Yeah.
let's evaluate after 10 weeks.
The hope was that we reassure parents that we're ready, and in 10 weeks, we get 20% going back, you know, and so when our numbers are
It's
gonna be low, as
scary,
the
it's
end point out, we're, you know, 200 kids are in high school on a daily basis, you know, between purple and gold and the Monday, Tuesday. But that's also how we made transportation work that didn't have costs, because otherwise, we would have had 3 times the bus runs that we had all the kids. So
Correct.
it really worked out, and they've done a nice job of it, and the structure of that schedule allows for in-person and remote to go back and forth, so.
If Ray was here, he would say, it's only costing you 10%, you're paying 90%, aid.
No, that would just,
No,
that would get
not-
cut 20%.
Not when you're not getting
And when
paid.
you're waiting on aid from before, so,
Correct.
so Dr. Bush, does that outline the board? I'm not speaking for you, do we want to hold and say we're waiting on UPK and kindergarten decision with our CDOs until the next meeting, or until,
I think we should
October.
do
And
that.
you're gonna meet with them and talk about.
we're gonna sit down and go
Until
over things.
They get paid when we get paid, what pay we get paid, they
Yeah, we got a bunch of ideas on what it could look like, but, you know, our initial conversation was just like, we're informed of this loss, reduction. We need to talk about it as a board, and then we'll have
Can
that.
we also
sit down.
have that conversation with the teachers union about possibly entertaining the idea of another program to work with those online
Absolutely.
students?
So then, and then what would you do with the staffing now?
Staff would stay in place for the balance of the students that are there. So we would reduce our cost per student by outsourcing those 30 students that it may cost us
No, the 30
grand.
The 30 students are already getting paid, so they're already being treated with the staffing that we have. Do you see what I'm saying? We're still paying the salaries. We are still paying the salaries whether
Those
they're at
students that
home or
just
not.
voted for
The
remote
program
only.
costs aren't reduced on the whole.
So right now, if you look at the physical aspect, with those 30 ROL, there's some classes that only have 2 kids in school per teacher.
Yeah.
And so part of,
Can we merge some of
so
them?
Colleen and I had a conversation today to answer that question. We talked about
Actually, student ratio.
a UPK teacher, our own, and having, or a pre-K teacher, and talking about having them do AIS to help out, because there's 2 kids in a program in one building, 2 or 3 kids. So that's ridiculous. So they need to do AIS, which they could do remotely or in person at the elementary school, because those students would need assistance. The problem is their funding was through UPK grant. So now if we pay them off, it comes off our general
It'll
fund.
be the general fund,
It's
an
general.
additional burden on the general fund.
Right.
Another 100.
So we either keep it as we pay them through the
Right.
grant and don't really utilize them, or pay them out of general fund. So this is where we're at. This is why
So
there's
it's-
So you will go talk to them about the possibility by the next board meeting, that a decision may be held to hold off until January, correct?
Well, hopefully not that late. I hope we get some answers, but yeah, worst case scenario. So I'll do that Wednesday. I'll go physically meet with them if they're available.
So you're not proposing January like Schenectady?
I wouldn't,
I don't want
I
to.
would be hesitant to go that far out.
Yeah, I'm glad you feel the
So
same.
I
I
think-
like November, just because if something changes, we're ready to go. The
Yeah.
program's there, and why wait that long? Hopefully there's answers from the state by October, November. The election will be over. So,
But
November.
we know we can't do it the way it's looking now, till we
We
get
can
more
start it
information.
now. Right,
We can't start now,
right.
based on where we're at, correct? Is that what?
We're already $4 million behind the cash flow. So I'm going to do pro forma cash flow. So I think that'll
Right.
paint a broader picture for you.
Right.
So you have your expenses, but you don't have that cash to pay for those expenses. So at some point, I'm not gonna be paying vendors. At some point, just to make payroll. So I just wanna make sure everybody's fully aware of that. My first priority is payroll. However, those payroll expenses that I've already accounted for in the general fund, there's that extra burden now that the state's not paying us on that federal grant. I don't have funding coming in to help pay for those.
So
Make
if
sure you
the
pay the
pre-K,
lights.
so if the pre-K staff is not going to start the pre-K program because we don't have the money, what happens with, aren't they our teachers?
Those teachers are getting paid from, so if you look at it, some of it's funded by the general fund, some of it's paid for by pre-K. So the general fund is a separate cash of money, special aid is a special cash of
Separate
staff.
than food
Separate.
pay,
Correct,
and separate than universal. pre-pay.
correct.
So they're three different pools we're talking about.
So we're close to $1 million in UPK funds.
But if
That's not coming in.
But if the program isn't going to start until then,
If you don't start them until January, and then we'll know. Again, I'm not advocating, I'm just giving you the full picture. So if you start in January, then you're saving half of those salaries at this point.
and what would happen to those teachers? They would collect unemployment? Is that?
They collect unemployment and we could pay them their health insurance along with the 85% we would fund.
As furloughed,
As a furlough.
furloughed employees,
They would get unemployment
they
as
get
well.
the unemployment as well as we pay for their benefits,
For
correct?
85%,
We pay
correct.
they still pay their 15.
They still pay their 15%, but we would pay
Okay.
85%.
But people saw that we're talking about accommodations that
Right.
it's $1,500, $2,000 a month to pay health insurance. So
Right, on
I think
COBRA.
it gave people an appreciation of how much we pay. So 15% still a reasonable
Okay.
amount. So we pay the 85%, the big chunk.
So Colleen, what we've talked about, is that giving you any direction to go forward so that when we come back at the September meeting?
I mean,
Wait, right.
I don't think we really got
To
anywhere.
summarize, right? We're not.
We didn't.
We didn't get
We
anywhere,
didn't give you
honestly.
anything.
No, you
Yeah,
didn't.
let's see.
All we've asked you to do right now in summarization is you're gonna come back with this pro forma for us
For the cash
and then
fund, right.
for
That's-
accountability.
right.
And then you can give us a report on how your meeting went with
CEOs,
the
yeah.
teachers union tomorrow and with the
CEOs.
contractors.
Yeah, we'll do
tomorrow.
that Thursday, by the way. I can't do Wednesday, but I just set a meeting.
When is the, when are you meeting with, STA?
Tomorrow,
Tomorrow.
10:30.
Okay, so how many meetings do you have scheduled? You've got to meet with the teachers union, you got to meet with STA,
Yes.
and you're meeting with the contractors tomorrow?
Yeah, we meet
Contractors,
with,
no, right? Oh, they
we
don't
meet
know
with
yet.
STA tomorrow at 10:30. We meet the ATA from 9 to 10.
Right.
And then Thursday is when we have the CDO meetings.
Okay,
And the aides already have agreements in, right?
They've already put in, just based on the
Correct.
conversation that Wednesday, correct?
And that takes a while to.
Yeah.
So,
And we talked with our attorney prior to that, having that conversation. So we have, Colleen and I having our to-dos tomorrow is to review the grievances is number 6 coming. So we'll be going over that tomorrow.
So when are we talking about meeting again?
Well, just the next board meeting is only 2 weeks out. So that'll be our next meeting.
Is that too far down the road?
Remember, you said our first payroll they're coming up.
yeah, isn't your first payroll
Payroll's
right
coming
around
up,
the
so
corner?
that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we're not making any decisions now.
So I would, unless we make a decision, I have to make that first payroll.
Okay,
What decision do we need to make right now that would,
Postponing it until January.
Or December 1st to review, or, an earlier date.
Essentially setting a deadline of sorts.
Right.
You need something.
I would think that decision needs to be made, or we're just punting it. And then we're waiting 2 weeks to come back to, and that's a lot of lost time.
And make the same decision.
And honestly,
Right.
2 weeks, the state's not gonna change their
Right,
mind.
we get answers. Right?
Yeah.
And some of these people might be able to find a job somewhere else
Mhm.
That's correct.
because it's not fair to leave them hanging,
You're right.
unfortunately.
I would not be necessarily in favor of January.
Yeah.
But, I would of, end of October, November,
Yeah.
and that type of. November at a hard date, let's just say that, I'll be in favor of November.
Well, second quarter is sometime, think, first quarter ends November 1st, 2nd?
Yeah, so you're
Something
starting
like
second
that.
quarter
Right.
after that, yeah.
So maybe the beginning of second quarter,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Right.
Calendars.
Before Veterans Day weekend, kind of.
Before Thanksgiving, probably.
Yeah.
Before.
So we could either set, like November 2nd, to set that as the date that we decide and review, or October 3rd.
Or did it make it the board meeting date? in
Yeah,
November?
shouldn't we wait until after the election too?
Let's
Yeah,
make
I
a
would wait
decision,
till after
and then
the
we find out
elections.
the funding
Yeah.
is gonna
Because
come
the
in.
governor will be very quick.
Do we
Yeah.
reverse that,
Yes.
or?
We
Say
could,
that again?
if the funding came in, then we have a special meeting and say we're reinstating.
So if funding came in, I'm gonna do a
We
happy
can make that
dance
change,
to
so.
pay last year's,
I'm sorry,
because I'm honestly, I am very, very nervous as far as cash flow.
Well, I would be nervous too, because you're down so much.
Correct.
You're down
If
so
I
much,
wasn't-
which is
if I wasn't
scary.
down so
Our
much.
district's not
you're
used to
nervous
that.
about the November date, the cash flow?
I'm nervous about cash flow now.
Okay. All
That's
right.
why we're recommending that maybe we vote tonight, and they're discussing a date right now that we would vote until, okay, we would hold off until, I myself, what's the date in November for our board meeting?
November 18th. Right before Thanksgiving.
Well,
Okay.
this letter sent out by Mr. Nutso says that we have made it difficult to postpone the timeline for the return of both pre-K and kindergarten students by pushing the in-person instruction for your children back to October the 5th.
Right.
So now we're saying November.
Well, for our-
But that's just indicating in-person
That's
instruction,
the
that's not the whole
in-person
program.
classes.
That's
That's
the
not
whole
LPP,
starting.
that's separate.
He-
Pre-K and kindergarten students will then receive online instruction from their teacher until the new October 5th in-person start date.
Correct, we have to get the.
So the teachers will be
So-
teaching, but on a virtual
So are
platform.
we talking about November? What are we talking about?
So push off until November 18th. We'll follow Kent's idea.
Okay.
And go November 18th instead of the administration's idea of waiting till January. That would absolutely kill parents if we were to do that.
So this letter-
I just read that email from that lady. It's,
Was only
I
sent
read
to
this off the email.
the school district people.
Yeah,
That
that's
wasn't
your
even sent
district
to the
personnel.
public.
right, that's
In
not
fact, they're
non-public
talking about
item.
it on Facebook. Why didn't they?
How did that get out there?
I don't know.
Well,
That's, oh boy.
that was a letter from principals to staff and to let them know of that reduction and to,
Oh, so the principals gave them
they
the,
sent the,
Yeah.
they sent out.
Warning.
Yeah.
But the public hasn't been given a date,
right, the
right?
public is waiting. They're the ones with the full anticipation.
And that's a
It's-
concern of mine too, is that
They haven't
parents
told.
need to plan. I mean,
Right.
Correct.
we are, we're stringing people along and stringing people along
Well, we
and,
set the hard date as September 21st. That was the one for in-person, but this was
but
just-
even introducing the
just pre-K.
October 5th date, then it's prolonging on that end. And as anybody that's employed, you gotta work, so you need to figure out childcare.
So does
It's,
November 18th help in any way, Colleen?
So November 18th, you're saying is start pre-K or deleting it till, I would rather.
Holding off until
And-
then,
Make a
I would
decision.
say
and then, by
holding
then
off
we,
until then.
yeah, and then what we're doing is, Joe Marie brought up a good point. By then, the election's over, actually.
Right.
Okay,
May
and
I
then,
make a suggestion?
yes,
Okay. If you're going to delay determining when the pre-K programs will be allowed again in the district, and you're saying until the 18th of November, you're really going to keep everybody on the fence until they hear on November 18th what occurs.
Bill,
It might not be a better idea to can't suspend them a little bit further so that people have, after your decision on the 18th, some time to reinstitute them. Maybe, and I'm just looking at the calendar, maybe cancel or suspend it until November 30th, and then on the 18th be able to say, well, it's effective December 1st, or maybe at that point in time you're going to come to the decision that you suspend it for a longer period of time. But giving it on the 18th for something to start on the 19th would seem to be a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think just the 18th will be when we make a decision based on the new guidance. So we could make the 18th the time we make the decision and it's implemented December 1st or
Is that our meeting date?
4th. Or,
that's a meeting.
the meeting date's
Oh.
November 18th.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
all right, now
We
I
have,
understand what Bill's saying, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
October 21st is the other meeting date, and then it's November 18th. But I understand what you're saying, Bill. It wouldn't be the next day that we would implement that idea.
Right.
So-
But remember, we're under the guise that if we get word, let's say in 2 weeks from now, and they say, hey, we're cutting this free, we're going to give you the funding you're going to need, then we can come back to an emergency meeting and immediately
Right.
say we will vote.
We have that right, yeah. We can bring it back in, which would be great.
So
We'd love
remember,
to
the
be able
only
to.
funding that they're gonna probably, their release first is the prior year.
Correct, I understand that. But you know what? That gives you $1,300,000.
Right.
Correct, but I'm already down that to pay.
Okay.
Well,
And we'll worry about that
You
later.
can't use any of that for this.
You'll work with the finance committee. They're going to
No,
find
that's
money
paying
for you
for last
somewhere.
year's expenses.
But $1.3 million could change the dynamics of it, you know.
It could.
It's substantial, so I
I'm
agree with
in
you.
agreement with you. How much
Yeah.
did you say the program cost for the first 3 months? It's,
3.2.
you know,
600,000, 500,000.
yeah,
for the first 3 months, right?
500,000.
For the first 3 months, yeah.
I like that idea, Bill, giving a few days ample time for parents, but between that now and then, hopefully we'll have some more information. John, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I am.
All right.
So a proposed resolution might read like, resolve that the Board of Education hereby suspends all pre-K programs in the school district up to and including November 30, 2020, subject to further resolution.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
Are you going to send that to Lori?
Yes, I will.
All right, do I have a sponsor for that?
And that will be resolution number 128.
128?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, do I have a sponsor?
I will.
Do you want to do all resolutions or one at a time?
No, let's just do that one first.
Okay. So resolution number 128, to repeat it again, is resolved that the Board of Education hereby suspends all pre-K programs in the school district up to and including November 30th, 2020, subject to further resolution.
Okay, I'm gonna we'll call roll call. John Battisti,
Yes.
Bill Marie,
Yes.
Deanne,
No.
Reverend,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Curtis,
No,
Nellie.
Nellie, yes. Okay, resolution passed. All right, now, would you take a look at the other resolutions that are on the packet tonight to see if there's any questions, concern, or discussion? 125 is the contract for motions. Questions? Any questions about the MOA with out-of-school suspension education in-school suspension program? Do I have a sponsor for 125, agreement with Capital Region Voters?
Hey, is that the best you could do on the pricing? Did you hammer them down?
All right, John,
Yes.
Joe Marie,
Yes.
You wanted to purchase them right out, and
Yeah.
I said no.
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Curtis,
Yes.
Dr. Bush, yes. Okay, take a look at resolution 126. That is the resolution on giving or having Central Civical borrow 20 Chromebooks to be available for students to use at the computer lab at Central Civical. May I have a sponsor?
Are you really gonna hold them for a week? I read that.
Okay.
What's the going them still?
Yes.
No cost.
All right.
Joe
I know.
Marie,
Oh, you
Yes.
said Central.
Central.
Deanna,
Oh,
Yes.
Kent,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Curtis.
Yes.
Dr. Bush, yes. Okay, resolution 127. That is out-of-school suspension education, in-school suspension program. May I have a sponsor for that?
Just a quick question before we go to that discussion on this. Is this a previous agreement that we've had in the past with them, or
This is
is
the
it?
MOA.
Yeah,
And it's just renewing this?
just renewing, yeah.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
It was not signed.
Sponsor?
You're a good man. A good man. I don't like you, but you're a good man. Hold it, hold it, hold it.
All right,
I
John,
loved it. I loved
Yes.
all that.
did you say yes, John?
Yes, I did.
Joe Marie?
Yes.
Down.
Deanna?
Remember how you said you didn't want iron?
Yes.
Gavin?
Yes.
Okay, have it up.
Curtis?
Yes, absolutely. If I can vote twice, I vote twice for it.
Okay. Do I have a sponsor to adjourn the meeting?
I know that.
Oh,
You
yeah.
call me.
All in favor of adjourning?
Yeah.
Yes.
Aye.
That one's a good save.
Okay, John, Finance Committee meeting, you want to take a look at the calendar? We have
Yep.
a board meeting on the 16th. Do you want to have a special meeting on September 14th?
Yes, maybe even a little earlier than that.
Okay, well, take a look at the calendar and
Okay.
we can do it during the day, Colleen, is that okay?
Finance committee.
Oh, sorry.
14th. Sorry.
Can the Finance Committee meet with you during the day instead of a meeting in the evening? Sure. Yes? All
Absolutely.
right, John is going to come up with a date and we'll let you know.
Okay, I have one more before we adjourn. Colleen and I, Mike Grieco, met with Liz and her team at Lynch. And Mike went through the schedule.
public?
This can still be public, this, of what their school looks like. With a cleaning schedule and the first floor ceiling and lights being put in. We don't think we can get staff in there until September 21st. So, yeah, at Lynch. Really, it's not there.
Correct.
There's ceilings that aren't even in place yet.
The tin
So
knockers.
there might be, our schedule could be put off a week for in-person or more.
What's
Maybe.
the reason for the level of delay?
There's
There's a-
staffing levels, there's materials coming in, obviously with COVID.
There have been delays in
Correct.
materials, I know that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's part of the reason. What they call the tin knockers. Knockers, they're hard to find right now.
For the duct work for this, yeah.
I've got a great guy I can send your way.
How fast does
You
it
know
work?
someone?
Yeah.
So, we're gonna stay on top of it.
Part of some union, but.
We're gonna stay on top of it, but it could be a delay for in-person at Lynch, just to kind of give a heads up. I met with Liz and it could be a week or so that we have to wait.
So those
Maybe
teachers will
even
do remote?
They'll just do remote,
Yeah.
and their schedule works for that. The teachers can still teach remotely.
Right.
It's just the in-person, so.
So the teachers can't even go into their rooms and set up anything or
So that's the
nothing?
hard part, because the contractors are all over. They have been going in, but again, you also have a lot of contractors that are walking around the building. So
Right.
You want staff walking in there with contractors in there, so there's a possibility, obviously, of.
You want kids in there then.
Correct.
Right, no, and that's
Well,
why
there'll be no kids.
we held off
Right.
on
Supposed to be,
orientation.
Right.
Well, they were supposed to have orientation the week of the 14th.
Right, that's
Oh,
true.
yeah.
So we put that out that unless something changes, that orientation will be remote. So we remain hopeful, but it could be a 10-day wait on in-person.
How's that match up with 180 days of school?
Yeah, that's
Still okay. We start September 8th with
Yeah.
in-person or,
online.
it doesn't matter, it counts. Yeah.
So does that same thing fall for the kindergarten delay? How does that all fall in?
Well, not a mandatory program.
So that
prepaid, so
there's
yeah,
the 180-day thing doesn't count?
doesn't count.
Gotcha.
Some schools are making it mandatory, but the state is not, so.
Okay, everybody, we are officially,
Are you all done before we-
I adjourn, I'm sorry, yeah, I'm all done. I want to make sure you guys do.
meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for your
Thank
time.
you.
Okay, good night.